Hello, fabulous entrepreneur. It's Tash Corbin here, and welcome to another episode of the Heart-Centered Business Podcast. This is episode number 287, which means you can find all the relevant links and show notes for today's episode over at tashcorbin.com/287. In today's episode, I'm going to tell you how to price an online course for optimal conversion. So if you are working on an online course, membership, group program, and you're worried about how you're going to price it and you really want to maximize that conversion, this is the episode for you. Let's dive in. I'm Tash Corbin, and this is the Heart-Centered Business Podcast. Okay, so actually there's a really straightforward answer to pricing for conversion, and that is lower the price, right? But I want to do this episode of the podcast because we don't want to just price based on conversion. We want to price based on a number of different factors because it's not actually as straight line as you think. Sure, you'll probably get better conversion at $100 than you would at $400. You'll probably get more sales at $50 than you would at $5,000. Your conversion rate will go up as the price goes down in most cases. But it's not the straight line that you think. When you halve the price of a program, you do not make double the sales. And I have absolutely seen that in my own business and with my own courses and programs. So for example, when I first launched my Udemy course, 30-Day Business Blast, it was a $20 program that I was launching. I ran a webinar and I did a proper launch for it and everything. And my conversion rate from that launch was about 28%. And now on Evergreen, whenever someone comes in and grabs my freebie for that, the conversion rate is at or just below 10%, right? About 10% conversion rate. My takeoff program is 100 times the price, and in launch it gets about 4 to 5% conversion, and on Evergreen it gets around 1% conversion, sometimes just under. So even though the price is 100 times more, my conversion isn't 100 times less. And so we don't actually want to be pricing just for conversion alone. If we were pricing just based on conversion, then I would literally just be looking at, well, at what point is it profitable with the lowest possible price? Because that's going to make it really easy for people to say yes to it. But we don't price just on how to get the most number of sales, despite what most gurus out there would tell you. It's like you're going to price for maximizing conversion, just focus on conversion, just get the sale. That's not actually what we want to be using as our only indicator or our only driver of pricing decisions. So I've got 4 factors that I want you to consider when it comes to pricing your online course. One is conversion. So to maximize conversion, you want to keep the price point as appropriate for your audience as possible, and you want to push it down, right? If you want to maximize conversion, you want to push your price point down. But we're not just pricing based on conversion. I also want you to price based on profitability. And the higher the price of the program, the more profitability you're going to have if you can keep your conversion rates up. So we also want to price for profitability. If your average cost per lead for your course is $100, charging $120 for your program isn't necessarily the right decision because it's got such a slim profit margin. So we do want to price also for profitability. So that is an upward pressure on pricing then, right? So conversion is a downward pressure on pricing. Profitability is an upward pressure on pricing. Then we actually have 2 other factors that I want you to take into consideration. Number 1 is maximizing completion. So maximizing the completion rate of your program. And generally, the higher someone invests in a program, the more likely they are to complete that program. The more likely they are to feel invested. And so therefore, they're going to be more likely to complete that program. Now, again, there comes a pricing cap where that doesn't actually apply. And Just because something is lower price doesn't mean you can't maximize completion rates in other ways. So again, using my 30-day business blast as an example, even though it's only a $20 program, it still has a really high completion rate. And that's because of the way that it's built and constructed and some of the things that I do to engage people and re-engage people in that program. So there are other ways that we can maximize completion, but maximizing completion is an upward pressure on pricing. So we've got downward pressure based on conversion. We've got upward pressure based on profitability. We've got upward pressure based on completion. And then the final factor that I take into consideration is relativity. Now, relativity is not to other things in the market. I don't actually recommend you look at the price of other things in the market because your product or service needs to be unique. It's niched. It's got a very strong value proposition. That relativity is actually to other ways that people could work with you. So if you also offer VIP one-to-one services that deliver the same or similar outcomes, then you want to make sure that your group program is priced with relativity to that. So in most cases, relativity is actually a downward pressure because if let's say your VIP package is $2,000, then you're going to, people will assume that working with you one-to-one will get them the outcome easier, quicker, faster, cheaper, all of those sorts of things, right? They're going to get there sooner. They're going to get there easier. They're going to get there with more hand-holding. They're going to get there more specific to their own needs. So people will always assume it's better to work with you one-to-one, which is a really interesting assumption and biopsychology space for us to explore, but that is what the research shows. So people will make assumptions that working with you one-to-one is more valuable. And so if your VIP package to work with you is $2,000, then charging more than $2,000 for your group program is going to create an issue of relativity in most cases. There are some exceptions to the rule, but in most cases it creates an issue of relativity. So relativity can be a downward price pressure as well because you want to make sure it's relative. Now, this is why I recommend before you go out and launch a group program, a membership, a mastermind, or anything like that, do a price increase of your one-to-one so that you're creating spaciousness in your time and what's available for you to be of service and be able to launch and deliver on your group program. So increasing your prices of your VIP one-to-one, it also helps with that relativity issue so that you don't have to push the price of your group program down as far. So you can see that there are a range of different things that I would recommend you take into consideration when pricing. Don't just price for conversion. But it is a factor. It is a factor you want to take into consideration. So how do you then make those decisions around pricing? Well, I start with the relativity issue because the relativity issue gives you a number to start with. So let's say your VIP way of people working with you one-to-one is $2,000, and then you've got a large scale group course that hundreds and hundreds of people are likely to be going through in the coming years. Then you might start with dividing your VIP package by 4. So if you work with me as a VIP, it's $2,000. If you want to do it in the group program, it's $500. Yeah. So then we can use that starting number. That's not the actual price. That's the starting number. We can use that starting number to start taking into consideration the other factors. At $500, will people feel that they are adequately invested to maximize completion of that program? If not, we might need to nudge the price up a little. At that price point, is it going to be easy for you to achieve a really strong conversion rate? If not, if you feel like $500 is just so out of range for your ideal clients, then you might need to bring that price down. And then final question is around profitability. At that price point that you've now come to, can you make enough profit for this to be a viable product in your business? If not, we might need to nudge it up a little. So you can see by putting those factors in order of starting with relativity, then completion, then conversion, then profitability, we're going to get to a price point that's going to make the most sense strategically for your business. Now, the last thing I want to say about pricing when it comes to group programs and courses is that you can always go up in price. So there's nothing wrong with you starting at a really, really no-brainer, easy yes price for people and moving that price up as you relaunch your program over and over again. And price increases are a great motivator for people to jump into a program sooner rather than later. If we know that a price increase is coming, then it's going to make us seriously consider whether we want to purchase right now. So I'm not suggesting that you go way, way, way down and bottom out your pricing. But if you're feeling a little uncomfortable with the price point that you've come to, you can always put the price up in subsequent launches, or during the launch, you can have an early bird and a full price. So start with something that feels really comfortable for you and that you think is going to be quite comfortable for your audience as well. Now, the final thing I want to say when it comes to things that are comfortable for your audience is that at any point in time, when you attract 100 people in who are interested in the outcomes that you deliver in your program, your goal is not to create a price point that's comfortable for every single one of those people, because there's only a small percentage of people who are actually ready, willing, and able to invest in both the time and the money to get the outcome. Your job is to focus on those people. And so you will have more people than not for whom the price point is going to be an issue for them at that point in time. So if you are getting three people saying, oh, it's just out of my price range right now, for every one person who joins, then that's actually a pretty decent ratio. So we can get very caught up in thinking, oh, it's too expensive, because that's going to be the most common objection that you get from people. But that doesn't mean you need to lower the price. Don't make it mean that you need to lower the price. And I have another podcast episode that I'll link to in the show notes of today's episode, and that is what to do when people say they can't afford it. So if you do get a bunch of people saying they can't afford it, I've got a podcast episode that will guide you through that process. But don't make it mean that you must need to lower your prices, because often that is not the case. All right. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of the Heart-Centered Business Podcast. I would love to know if you've got any questions or light bulbs that have happened as a result of this episode. Come on over to the Heart-Centered Soul-Driven Entrepreneurs Facebook group. Use hashtag podcast Let me know you've been listening to episode number 287 and what your questions, light bulb moments, or comments are. Let's continue the conversation in the community. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of the Heart-Centered Business Podcast. Until next time, I cannot wait to see you shine. Bye for now. Would you like more tips, tools, and resources to help you grow your heart-centered business? Head to tashcorbin.com today.